Good morning, everybody, and welcome to All-Star Insights. I'm your host, Chris McKnight, along with my co-host, Coach Rock.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys. Welcome to the show.
And we have a great show today. We have former MLB player and former NFL player, Mr. Brian Jordan, with us today. Hi, Brian. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Still early for me. Jeez, oh,
Watching that game last night, right?
yes. I mean, what an incredible ball game. I mean, golly, that's what baseball's all about. That's old school baseball right there.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Hey, we really appreciate you jumping on with us today. And I know we have a ton of questions to get with you. And so we're just going to kick it right off and start with in your upbringing with youth baseball. Okay. Can you just give us a little background on that and, going through the youth and into high school and, go from there?
Well, for me, my mom and dad always encouraged playing youth sports, recreation ball, because, back in my day, it was just recreation. We had travel ball, but, not many kids played travel ball because, one, you couldn't afford it back then. So recreation was available and it was just a fun time. My parents, they said, the more that I'm on the field, I'll stay out of trouble. So they put
Yeah.
me in that organized recreation for a reason. I played football, baseball, basketball, and I loved all three. So they kept me busy all season playing sports. And that was the big thing. My dad was a great athlete. And I don't care what I did. My grandfather always told me I wasn't as good as my dad. One youth football game, I scored 6 touchdowns and ran for 250 yards. I didn't even want to go to McDonald's. All I wanted to do was go see my grandfather, tell him how better I was than my dad. And I remember going in the house, but my chest all out. And I said, Pop, I scored 6 touchdowns and ran for 250 yards. I'm better than dad. And, he smiled at me. He looked and said, your dad would have scored 7 touchdowns and ran for 300 yards. And, as a kid, it was deflating to me, but it was a lesson behind it. After I left the house, all I did was try to get 7 touchdowns and run for over 300 yards. So it really motivated me to stay inspired and to keep working to be the best. So, it's a different time. We always stayed outside, playing sports until the lights came on. So, my kids, I can't get them off the TV. So it's a different world today. And I'm just glad that, I was able to just stay out on the fields and play. And, the reason why I played 2 professional sports.
Awesome. Real quick, Brian, can you talk to us about how you feel really about playing more than one sport? Because there's so many different perspectives about that coming up if a kid is playing more than one sport. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I try to talk to all parents, get their kids to play multiple sports. One, you play one sport, you're utilizing the same muscles. Over time, those muscles are going to fail you. And we see it so often in the game of baseball now. These kids are playing 100 and something games a year at a very young age. And to put that much on your body in one sport, to me, it's not a good thing. Multiple sports mean you use multiple different muscles. And to me, you become a better athlete. You stay hungry for a sport. And that always kept me motivated to get to the next sport. I missed it. I missed it. And today you see, coaches and parents just saying, play one sport, you can be successful. So you're cutting your kids' options off right away. I was fortunate, blessed enough to have 3 scholarship offers: football, basketball, and baseball. My parents was into keeping your options open, son. When you get old enough in high school, then you can make that decision on which one you love the most. And these kids today just don't have those options anymore. And they're not reaching their full potential as far as being a better athlete. To me, you just stay one dimensional. And in the long run of trying to play in the big leagues, they're looking for athletes. They're looking for kids who can make adjustments. And when you play one sport, you tend to stay in one mode, and you have a more difficult time of changing. And that's the big difference. Athletes can change, they can make adjustments. Coaches love that. And that's why it's so important to me to continue to motivate and inspire parents to get their kids to play multiple sports.
Yeah, good stuff there. So let's talk about, high school and going from high school into college recruiting. University of Richmond Spiders in our backyard here. So let's go through that process a little bit. How you really narrowed down going to the University of Richmond. Like you said, you had multiple scholarship offers. What was like some of the deciding factors to make that choice for you?
Well, everybody in the world says, "Why did you go to Richmond?" Growing up in Baltimore, to be honest, my dream school was University of Maryland. I wanted to be a Terrapin. And my junior year, before it even started, well, during the season anyway, I had a full scholarship to University of Maryland. So, guys, I didn't take another trip because I had the full scholarship already to Maryland. All these colleges where I could have gone on the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest. I mean, I had scholarships in football, scholarships in baseball, but it was never I can play both sports. And University of Maryland promised me that. And just like any other kid, I wanted to go to the big school. I wanted to be Division 1 and play on TV. But just as I'm ready to sign a dotted line, Bobby Ross was the head coach at University of Maryland, and he looked at me and said I couldn't play baseball my freshman year. And I was like, oh, he thought he had me because it was the last minute. And I remember looking back at my parents and saying, I can't go here because my dream is to play two professional sports. And now I can't trust the head coach who tell me I can do it and then try to pull back at the last second. So we went home, and University of Maryland, Mike Shannon, I mean, not Mike Shannon, but the wide receiver coach Shannon, he kept on calling, even though I was going to University of Maryland, he kept calling. And when I declined and walked away from Maryland, I made that call to Richmond, and they allowed me to play both sports, do whatever I wanted at Richmond. And that's why I ended up at University of Richmond, which was probably one of my best decisions in my life.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said too, I mean, we get it. You're a hometown guy, being a Terp, that of course, but first of all, it was a good decision for you, you know, for your career. Making sure I think the important thing you said there, that the trust, building that trust with coaches, because not only are your parents and yourself going to a school to play sports, but academically, and they're putting you in the hands of that person for 4 years. So having that trust is really important, not just for your playing and academic, but just so your parents feel comfortable knowing that there's somebody there that's going to keep an eye out for you.
Yeah, that was the most important. And my parents were really encouraging on going to university. So my dad always told me, hey, I don't care where you go. If you're good, they're going to find you. And, going to a Division 1 AA school, of course, I had to go out and prove myself, especially after my redshirt junior year, getting invited to the Senior Bowl. I wish I had that all over again and I was in a better position to not have to play in that game. But to be invited to the Senior Bowl was where I had to prove myself coming out of Richmond. I was a third round. They projected me as a third round cornerback coming out of Richmond, and went to the Senior Bowl, had a great week of practice for Dan Reeves and the Denver Broncos coaching staff. So now here it is, I'm drafted in baseball first round, and now from a projected third round pick to maybe one of the first or second safeties taken in the NFL, me or Steve Atwater, if you guys remember Steve Atwater. So here it is. Everything was great. Everything's working out perfect. And I started in that Senior Bowl game and ended up about to make the tackle on Cleveland Gary, University of Miami, and my own teammate took me out and I break my leg and dislocate my ankle in the Senior Bowl. So imagine that. Here it is, your dreams are ready to come true. And, I'm sitting there and my foot's turned the other way and the bone is almost coming out of my leg. So it was crazy. But, you see I got this FCA shirt on. If it wasn't for God to keep me going and proving a lot of people wrong who didn't think I would make it in both after that injury. Buffalo still drafted me in the 7th round, and I went out there and proved myself and ended up starting 3 years for the Atlanta Falcons. So, like I tell all kids, man, never give up on your dreams. Believe it, you can achieve it. And that's what kept me going.
So I know this is probably something that you've replayed a couple of times in your head too. So I know when you were playing in the Cardinal system, that the Cardinals wanted to keep you just playing baseball. They didn't want you playing football. And just like you said, maybe because of those type of injuries that could occur on the football field. What was the decision-making process to give up football? Because you, again, very good, one of the few guys ever, to play professional football at that level and professional baseball? What were one of the things that deciding factors?
Well, honestly, guys, I was not ready to give up football, and I was just thankful and appreciative to the St. Louis Cardinals. After that injury, I had already been drafted first round by the Cardinals, played 30 minor league games, hit over 300, and back in school. So to allow me to be able to do that, I look back and I say thank you to the St. Louis Cardinals. And then after that injury, they stuck with me. They had the surgery, and I still went back to football after the surgery. They really did a lot for me to keep me going. And after my third year with the Falcons, I actually led the team in tackles, and I was alternate in the Pro Bowl, so I was just starting to take off. So the decision was really, really tough. I was an unrestricted free agent in football, and I remember telling Jerry Glanville, who was my head coach at the time, "You guys better hurry up and sign me before the Cardinals come," because I wasn't ready to give up football. I was just taking off. But the Cardinals came and they offered me another 3-year guaranteed deal just to play baseball. And, by then I had my daughter, I was married. So that was a tough decision, one of the toughest I had to make. And it was a smart decision, playing 15 years of Major League Baseball. Longevity was definitely in baseball. But I really miss the game of football. But, sacrifices we make, and it worked out great. I can't complain. 18 years of professional sports.
Can you speak on, excuse me, can you speak the mentality and what do you say to that parent and what do you say to that athlete as far as having the mentality of the transition or not giving up or failure or and going through their successes?
Wow. I mean, you got to be strong. One, you got to be a believer. You got to believe that God has something for you. And all of us is gifts. God gives us gifts. And once you figure out that gift, man, you run with it. And I knew as a young kid, I loved sports. It wasn't anything I wanted to do more than play sports. And it didn't matter which sport. So I had that drive, that mentality. And again, it comes from my dad being a really good athlete and really pushing me. Tease my dad. I just call him Buddha because he would just sit up in the stands with his hands crossed, never say a word, never yell. But after the game, he would critique me and be negative and positive at the same time. And I needed that. But it gave me that drive to compete. And I would encourage every parent, play cards, play anything, and try to develop that type of mentality to compete. Once you become someone who loves to compete, life is easier in sports. You're always going to want to win. You're always going to give your all and 110%. The biggest things with kids today is they don't focus on sports as much anymore. They have the talent, the ability, but like you said, they don't have the mentality. They don't have that I'm gonna compete and win every time I get out there. And if you can develop that in your kid, yeah, they may cry a lot because they lose, but that's not always bad. But you gotta compete, man. You gotta have that competitive heart, that nature that I'm gonna win. I'm never gonna give up. And that's when you become real successful.
That really good point there because I think a lot of kids. I saw you doing the little video thing with
That's
your
all.
son.
They want to compete in that. That's the
Right?
problem.
They compete in video and on Xbox. And one of the things I think that really, like you said, has to be a foundation is teaching the kids how to compete. And win, lose, or draw. You can learn from all those scenarios. When you lose, especially like in baseball, 162 games, you're not winning 162 games.
Hmm.
Nobody is. But how you bounce back off those losses, or you have an 0 for 3 game, what your mindset is, how you bounce back. That's what's going to really make you resilient and become a
Yes.
better player. So for you, as a hitter in baseball, what were some of the techniques you used when you had an 0 for 3 day and you had to get ready to play the next day, at 7 o'clock again?
Man, I really had to work hard on this, man, because I was that guy. I go 0 for 3. I feel like my life is over with. I just think about it all night, can't sleep. But one day we were playing a game and I was hitting behind Andrew Jones. And Andrew Jones struck out, the nasty curveball, and he took it. And I remember looking at him and he was smiling, and I'm mad at him for striking out. I'm like, man, get on base so I can drive you in. But he looked at me and I said, what are you smiling at, man? And he said, he threw me a nasty curveball and he's gonna throw it again. and I'm gonna get them. Meanwhile, I'm focused on, man, if I fail, I'm angry, I'm mad, and I looked at him and said, man, because you know what? The next at bat, he threw him that curveball and he hit a home run. And he came across the plate, high fived me, and said, I told you. And from that day on, I said, you know what? I'm beating myself up every at bat. And all of a sudden, I started taking his mentality and understanding, because, I'm a football player trying to play baseball. So my mentality was totally different from a lot of those guys. I figured every play in football, you got to win. You got to win. So every at bat, I felt like I had to win. I had to win. And even though I understood later on in life that failing is a learning tool. And after I struck out or made an out, I felt like I failed. I didn't understand how, like you said, 162 games. You can't have that mentality and be successful in baseball. You can't worry about failures. Like you said, you got to pick yourself up for the next play. And that's every sport. You make a mistake, you better figure it out and make the next play. I just watched my son this weekend fumble the ball. We play 8 years old, 8U playing in Dallas, travel ball. He's on the number one team in the nation. And he came over the sideline crying. And I grabbed him and I said, next play. Don't worry, make up for that. Play defense, get a fumble, intercept the ball, make up for that. It's going to happen. How do you bounce back? You make a winning play. You turn the game around. And that's what he did. He got back in there. He ran 60-yard touchdown, changed the game. And now he's smiling at the end of the game. And I said, see, let it go. Next play. And it's hard for kids to understand that. But if you can get the kids to understand, especially in baseball, because we see so many kids 0 for 3, 0 for 4, I'm done with this game. They want to quit. They want to give up. And use failure as a learning tool, and you'll succeed in life.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because I think you said football is, of course, is a different mentality. X amount of plays, in 4 quarters, and you play 16 games. That's your season, the whole season. So every play, something hinges on almost every play. Where in baseball, 162 games, then plus playoffs, and going through that. If you put that kind of pressure on yourself every at bat or every time you're in the field, you're not going to make it through 162 games. I think, and that's one of the biggest things I think that people, they always ask, what's the difference between a AAA player and a major league player? The talent level is probably very close, as you know, but it's the mentality, that resilience that those players are able to just keep going in the big leagues, where maybe the minor league guys need some more refinement, need some more ABs to learn the mental part.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And for me, early in my career, you got to understand, I played 30 minor league games in A ball, rookie ball, went back to play football, came back, played another 30 in A ball, and another 30 after that in double A, triple A. And I'm back on the football field. I had to learn on the fly. When I got to the majors after just playing like 90 to 100 minor league games, I had to learn every day. Ozzie Smith was he was my mentor. And I had Willie McGee on the team. And those guys were great mentors, great teachers. And I remember I got thrown out of my first baseball game because I didn't know baseball rules. And I remember drawing a line in the sand on the umpire. After having a 17 game hitting streak, I draw a line my first at bat and I get tossed, and I'm looking at the umpire. Why'd you throw me out of the game? And I walk over to the dugout, and Ozzie Smith is on the top step. And you remember Red Fox in the Sanford and Son? He would
Yeah.
always do that. You big dummy, you can't draw a line in the sand on the umpire. And I was like, why not? So I was really learning, my first 3 years in the big leagues. I mean, it was just like every day was another learning experience. And I remember Joe Torre was my manager, and he had to send me to a therapist because early in my career, my rookie year, I had that football mentality. I was always locked up tight, ready to go at the pitcher. And uh, Brett Saberhagen threw up under my chin, and I'm looking at him with rage in my eyes. I'm going to knock you out. Next pitch, he throws a high fastball. I swing as hard as I can, strike one. Next pitch, even higher. I swing, strike two. Next pitch, strike three. And there it was again, Ozzie Smith on the top step. you big dummy. You can't get mad at the pitcher for throwing up under your chin. He's just trying to mess with your focus. And surely another lesson learned. So it took me a while to learn the game of baseball at the major league level. I was raw talent, but I didn't know how to play the game. I didn't know, how to steal a base. I was just using talent and going for it. And that aggressive attitude, I wanted to run over the catcher. I'd rather run over the catcher than hit a home run sometimes in the game or take out the shortstop. I mean, infielders were scared of me when I was on first base. But it's like you said, I mean, it's that mentality that you have to learn in baseball where you can't be so aggressive. You have to be passive. You have to be patient. And I didn't have some of those qualities, going from football field to baseball. And it's a lot to learn. And you have to be consistent in the game of baseball to be able to stay a long time.
I mean, if I was Saberhagen and 5'11", 200-pound guy running at me, I'd be a little worried too.
But I ended up losing that battle though. He did what he was supposed to do, get in my head. But a lesson learned, and that never happened again.
Can you speak to today's game versus yesterday's game? Because it's
Wow.
evolved so much. So I want to hear from your perspective the differences that you see and how some of these players and parents can even make adjustments to understanding that.
Well, I think Major League Baseball is trying to keep up with the times. When we played the game, we had an older generation crowd who was listening to radio. They could sit in and watch a 4-hour game and be happy. But now this younger generation, man, everything has to happen now, now, now. And Major League Baseball understood that. So how do we keep the attention of the younger generation? Well, let's go with analytics. Let's start teaching these kids mathematics at a youth level, spin rate, and all of this. The purpose for it to me was just to educate younger kids on the math and how important numbers are. And so they had to run with it. I mean, shortening the game to me was, as a broadcaster, I was like, yes, because those long games, I hated baseball after a while. So they did me a favor with the analytics and speeding up the game. I love the clock pitch, not so much into the analytics as far as spin rate and all. To me, I don't care what the spin rate on your bat is. If it goes over the wall, it's a home run, and that's all that matters, and the game has changed. It's analytics, it's numbers, it's keeping the ball in the air, not hitting the ball on the ground, which is crazy to me. And
Now, also, real quick, back in the day, you used to see lefty on righty or righty on lefty. Now you got lefty on lefty a lot. And I know that used to be a cardinal sin. Like you would never go against the grain in reference to that concept. Can you speak on that a little bit?
you know what? It's again, it's about the percentages. It's about, one, you have the Harvard guy up there analyzing everything a pitcher and hitter does. So if he sees that lefties hit lefties better, then you're going to be put in that situation. Before, I mean, right-hander hit lefty, righty, it didn't matter. But now the game has become about the numbers, about results. And I'm gonna give you an example, man, because I played for Tony La Russa. And I tell everybody, Tony La Russa was analytics before they were analytics. He played by the numbers. I remember I was hot as a tamale. I mean, I'm swinging. The ball is like a grapefruit in there to me. And we go and face Sid Fernandez. And I come into the ballpark and my name is not in the lineup. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm an everyday player. I'm breaking. And I go into Tony's office and he says, hey, well, I'm looking at your numbers and you're one for whatever off of this guy, and so sees him a little better, and I'm out of the lineup. And I'm sitting there like, dude, this is my day against Sid Fernandez. I'm seeing everything like, so I'm angry and mad. But managers like Tony La Russa went by the numbers, and now it's all about the numbers. He got a head start, and I give him a lot of credit because he won games with not a lot of talent. He may have one superstar, but everybody was average. So he put them in the right positions to succeed by basing it off the numbers. So today I look at the game and it's the same way. You got outfielders pulling off their cap and looking at numbers. And it's like, what is happening? What happened to the instincts of the game? Being prepared before the game. It's no longer there. So it's a huge difference, the game of baseball than back in the day.
And
And I
I understand you, some of the managers that you played for, Joe Torre, Tony La Russa, even though they used the numbers, like you said, they still played their instincts.
exactly.
They still knew the game, and because of their experience and like you said, the Cardinals. I mean, they were the classic move 'em, hit and run, move
Yes,
them over, get them in, small ball, and that's what made you guys very successful, during that period. So, like you said, you didn't have four guys hitting 30 home runs, 40 home runs a year, but you had guys that knew how to play the game. You had managers that were, very, very good with instincts and their gut feelings.
and that's what wins ball games: instincts, gut feelings, and like you said, it's no longer there. And that's the bad part about it. You're seeing younger managers now because they're controllable, because they will get the numbers and live by the numbers. You look at the manager for the Cardinals, Mike Schilt, who just went from a bad team at the end of the year and got the Cardinals to the playoffs, and he gets fired because he started using his instincts instead of the numbers, and he was successful. But you didn't fall into the culture of this new game, and he gets fired. It was crazy, and I love that guy because he was a St. Louis Cardinal for life. I mean, through the minor league systems and worked his way up and had a lot of success as a manager. But this is how important the analytics and the new managers they have to think. It's all about, you don't use your instincts anymore. They already have it written down. You might well let AI run it. Just just put a computer in the manager's seat and just let it go.
That's going to be crazy when they get rid of the umpires. If they get rid of umpires for balls and strikes, man, I don't know
It's
how I feel
coming.
about
It's coming, man. It's coming. I mean, everything is going AI analytics, and it's coming. Believe me.
Hey, so Brian, we're going to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about, your initiatives and your foundation and how you started that, and give us a little background and what you're doing right now with your foundation.
Well, I started my foundation in 1998, and my mom was an educator, and she taught kids with special needs. So, I wouldn't wish this on any kid. My mom taught at my high school, which I got away with absolutely nothing with my mom being there. But I had a chance to sit in her class and watch her pour heart and soul into kids with special needs and get them to understand that despite your disability, you can be successful in anything that you want to do. You just got to believe it and you can achieve it. And to sit down and watch my mom pour her heart and soul into giving kids hope, I knew if I ever reached my dreams and make it in the professional racing sports, that I was going to start a foundation and give back. And I did that at the end of sort of the end of my career. I started the Brian Jordan Foundation, really just providing scholarships for those resilient kids who deserve to go to college, but just don't have the resources, don't have the background, single parent homes. I mean, we've given scholarships to homeless kids who were very successful living out of a car. We've given out over $1 million since 1998 in scholarships. And to see these kids go out and be successful in life, mentor them through their college years. And for most, we find them jobs after college. And they've gone on to be, I mean, we have CEOs. And it just makes my heart proud to see the progress that we've made in my foundation since 1998. And we have one fundraiser a year, golf tournament. And that's how we raise our money and get great support. And it's been awesome for me to start that foundation, and it's still going strong. But to see the success that these kids are having is awesome. And I think everybody should be a part of something, and helping our youth be successful. So I was fortunate enough to start that in 98. It is yet expanded because I write children's books now, and I'm in the elementary school space. We got to get these kids reading by third grade. They're building jails based on third grade reading, and over almost 70% of kids cannot read successfully at the third grade level. So you imagine how many jails they're building all around the country. So it's my mission to get kids reading first and second grade so that they're prepared at third and fourth grade. So it's been fun for me. We play a lot of kickball games. I challenge the kids. And it's amazing if you challenge kids how competitive they become. And I make So every top first grade class, second grade class get to play me in kickball. And I make the teachers play kickball, and I make all the losing classes watch so they stay motivated to win the next contest. And I'm there in their schools, 4 times a year, man. And it makes me proud. By the third time I go in that school, the whole school is like, Ryan is here, and it's like, to me, it proves the impact an athlete can have on young kids, and how I think athletes should be way more motivated to get in these elementary schools and encourage kids to do whatever they want to do in life and be successful. I feel great about that reading challenge, and it's growing and growing, and it's very impactful. We're seeing AR testing scores start to rise. So kids are getting it. They're understanding it. And as you guys know, technology today is really, it's helpful, but it's hurtful too in the same sense, because it's a cheat code for these kids not to read. And that's a big battle in itself that we have as adults have to continue to work on with our kids.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And again, you had an ultra successful career in football and in Major League Baseball. But just hearing you talk about your program, that's probably more, important to you
Yes.
than the success that you had in those two sports. And like you said, sometimes I think, athletes of all, high school athletes, college athletes, professional athletes, they don't know the impact, that they could have because the kids look up to them so much. And by saying one encouraging word or getting that kid to be motivated to read, or, getting him to be able to go to a practice and having a great practice, and that coach at the end of the practice says something positive to that kid,
Hmm.
make his day,
Yes.
and you don't know the background and things. So I applaud you for that. That is something that is a really a not just a sport thing, is just a humanitarian thing, and that's awesome.
We got to get rid of the autocorrect and the emojis.
Yeah. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. But just to expand on that, I'm just living a legacy that my mom put out there for me, and and giving young kids hope. That's all we can do as adults. And like you said, one positive word to a kid can make all the difference in the world. And I'm watching sports today, guys, and youth sports with this whole NIL stuff. I mean, this is a whole different conversation we can have, really,
Yeah.
and how it's affecting our younger generation and our parents. Everything is social media now. And my son's mom is the same way. I mean, she puts everything on social media. I just haven't bought into it yet because I'm from the older generation. But I'm afraid for umpires, referees, because the game has become that serious. And parents are going crazy. Yeah, I just left Dallas this weekend, and my son was playing the game, and parents are in the audience just acting inappropriate, cheering for their teams, and taunting the other teams, and it's going in a bad direction. I think sports is the pressure that these kids have now. It's totally different from when we were raised. There wasn't, yeah, we were competitive, but it wasn't a lot of pressure on us as kids because our parents, they did okay, and we lived a decent life. But when it gets down to lower income, not even lower income areas, but the parents they want their kid to make up for their lives. And the pressure that they're putting on these kids is tremendous. And so I just think sports is not going in the right direction. We have to figure it out how to get these kids to just relax and play the game and have fun. We're taking the fun out of it because we're making these kids get NIL deals at 7, 8, 9 years old. It's ridiculous, man. And I want to know how you guys feel about it because you're coaching and you're seeing this. The parents are writing all kinds of notes to you because their kid is not playing as much, and because they want their kid to be the next NIL sensation or social media sensation. And that's the part that I'm afraid of right now. And when we talk about the difference in sports today, we didn't have that pressure. We did it for fun. But today, these kids are doing it because their parents are making them doing it and putting pressure. I mean, to sit down and see all these kids lifting heavy weights and they're 8 years old and 9 years old is just crazy to me. But their parents want them to get a leg up, which they don't understand is hurting their child in the long run. But it's something that we should be concerned about as coaches and as parents. How can we get it back to just kids having fun?
Yeah. And long-term development, people, USA baseball has a great stuff out. The Canadian baseball has a great long-term development plan, but unfortunately, like you said earlier, nobody wants long-term anymore. Everybody wants, I want to be better tomorrow. And especially in baseball, baseball is not that type of sport.
No.
One of my old coaches used to say this all the time. Baseball is like, a ripening fruit. You can't rush.
Yeah.
Get you get a banana when it's green. You got to let it get yellow.
Right.
You got to
Right.
let it take its time. Parents and players today want that immediate success. And you go play in a tournament. They want that 99-cent medal. Like that's gonna at 11, 12, 13 years old. Like that's gonna make a difference whether they get recruited or not. They just don't understand, and that's part of the reason why Kids on First and Tuckahoe Sports, why we really started this podcast was because we want to get people like you who live that and understood it and really getting the information out to parents and players that you don't have to, have that ultra success. You have to learn how to compete,
Hmm.
and learn the resiliency, but not worry so much about what the other guy's doing, how you stack up. And like you said, going on social media and reading about this kid who's 14 and he's throwing 90. And then you look at a 14-year-old and you're throwing 72. Oh, I'm never going to be to that level. Everyone's got their own journey, but that's a hard concept for parents and players to understand.
I
And
think it's
it goes.
important that we
I'm sorry.
get to understand also what success really means. Does success really mean this, or success really mean something else? Because a lot of parents don't understand the concept of what success is. And once we as leaders in the sports world get them to understand that, we may be able to create that turn and have them to be able to change their perspective to what success really means.
Well, parents don't want the development stage anymore. They want instant gratification, despite how athletic or athletic their child is, they still want the instant gratification, which puts way more pressure on coaches today because we see the reality, well, that kid is not too athletic, but their parents see it in a different way and think you're going to work magic to change that kid overnight. Like you said, the patience is not there from the child standpoint and the parent standpoint. So we really got to be cautious on, who we can get on our teams. I always go back to there's no more recreation sports where kids can develop before they get to travel ball. Travel ball is so watered down now that every kid is on the travel ball team, but most of those kids should not be on the travel ball team. And you see all these organizations just making a lot of money on it, but we have totally gone away from how elite travel sport was. It's everybody plays now. So it's no more development stage where recreation handled all of that to where you can grow into travel ball. And I think that is the drastic mistake that we're making as the baseball world. It's no more developing kids, and we're losing a lot of kids the game of baseball because of that. So I would love to see recreation brought back so these kids can develop into travel ball and parents are not just wasting money on travel balls and being disappointed, or blaming the coaches because they're not on a good team. But what do you guys think about that? I mean, you've seen millions of organizations come through where you're looking at a team like, man, this kid shouldn't be playing travel ball.
Let me tell you right now. Right? I'm the type of coach where I'll tell the parent, and I have to have a conversation with the owner of the team or whoever, like, listen, this is not going to be a good fit for this particular situation for an A team or a B team. This child may need to be on a developmental team situation. Build them up so that they can transition into a shared vision that I think we all should have at the end of the day. I mean, I'm not going to be that guy to destroy a kid's confidence who's a developmental kid on an A or B team level, sitting on the bench the entire time just to get a check. I mean, at the end of the day, what does that serve that child,
Hmm.
or that parent for that matter?
Yeah,
Well, I
and
think,
I think that I always try to look at it as a 3-to-1. You should practice 3 times for every one game. But a lot of parents and a lot of clubs are the opposite. They want to play more games and practice once a week, or some organizations just show and go. They sign guys up and they say, "We'll meet you at this tournament," and and play. And yeah, if you're throwing 90 and you're a superstar athlete, that's great. But for most kids, that's not the way. You have to practice. You have to understand the team concepts, and you have to put the time in extra outside of your team practices. And that's probably the hardest thing, I think, nowadays, to get parents and players to buy into.
Yeah, that takes me back to I remember I was invited down to Orlando to coach a team, So I had to go down there and just get players I didn't even know, haven't heard of, or whatever, and actually coach them. So after taking them through a practice, I knew, man, I have a whole lot of average players, competing in this tournament where you had travel teams sticking together and this and that. But like you said, teamwork concept. I got my guys to believe in themselves in that short period of time by being positive. And we ended up winning games. And I'm scratching my head like, how are we doing this? And we ended up in the championship. And just to give you an example of how crazy coaches are, he knew that he was playing me in the championship. So he started flying guys in from his regular travel team to beat me in the championship. And I'm watching his players. One player walked off the field and just sat there, just turned against the guy. And then he flew in a guy that was a left-hand pitcher. And guys, when I tell you he threw 80% curveballs to my guys, and they ended up winning, and I was like, hey, great job. And I looked at the coach like, what are you doing? Why did you have your pitcher throwing 80%? I went to his parents after the game and said, don't let your child play for this coach. Your child should not be throwing this, because you're talking, it was 8U, 9U.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous, man. But this guy wanted to win so bad. This is what I'm telling you. Coaches are destroying these kids early just so they can stick their chests out. And again, you're hurting these kids, man. And I see it all the time, how competitive these travel ball coaches are. It's no longer fun for the kids. I mean, they're putting so much pressure on these kids to win, win, win. And that's where we're losing a lot of kids to baseball.
Man. Hey, Brian, we really appreciate your time today. Great insights. Love talk. I mean, we could talk for another 2 hours.
I know, man. I'm having fun, man. Jeez.
We're gonna get to see you again soon with coming up to Richmond.
Yes.
With your program, and we're really excited about that. So we really appreciate your time today, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the reading program and the classic that we're going to be running up here in Richmond this year. So thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, guys, and I'm looking forward to getting back into Richmond, man.
Yeah,
it all
no,
started.
it'll be awesome.
When you come back in Richmond, come to the Weinstein Center. I'll be right over there training.
All right, I'm gonna come mess with you. I'm gonna come mess with your players too.
All right, there it is.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today with our special guest Brian Jordan. All-Star Insights is sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good day.